James Harper sat on the edge of his chair, heart hammering in his chest, as the studio lights of The Chase cast long shadows across the sleek quiz-set floor. Across from him, the formidable figure of the Sinner Man, Paul Sinha, sat steepling his fingers, glasses glinting, that inscrutable smile hovering at the corners of his lips. James's hands were still quivering slightly as the final round approached. He'd built a decent cash pot for his team, £12,000. Not astronomical, but respectable. His team of 3 others looked at him for a nod. They were nervous, but trusting. He took a deep breath and then glanced at Paul. The Sinner Man raised an eyebrow. The chase was on. From the moment the buzzer sounded, everything was in high gear. James began his cash builder round, knocking off question after question. He glanced up, saw the clock ticking faster than usual, saw the perspiration on his teammate's brow behind the camera. He answered 1 more, 2 more, and then he pressed the buzzer. "What is the capital of Lithuania?" He answered calmly. "Vilnius." Correct. The pot rose to £17,000. The team cheered quietly, still tense. They had 1 shot at the offer. Low, middle, high. James heard his teammate Sarah's voice whisper, "Go high." He swallowed. He knew it was risky. The top offer was £40,000, but if they failed, they'd leave with nothing. The middle, £20,000. The low, half his pot, £8,500. The stakes soared. "I'm taking the high offer," James declared. Sarah gasped. His other teammates stared. Paul leaned forward. His steepled fingers came apart, and he said softly, almost kindly, "Bold choice." Yet his voice hinted at challenge. Then came the break, a minute's pause before the head-to-head with Paul. The studio buzzed with expectancy. When they resumed, Paul caught them early. He blitzed a series of questions while the team faltered. It looked grim. But then Sarah recovered. The other teammate Mark answered 2 in a row, and James himself steadied, reclaiming their momentum. Still, Paul closed the gap. Time wound down. As the final seconds approached, Paul shot a look at James and said, "You made a minor error in the earlier round. Sarah, you answered just a fraction too quickly. Buzzed when the audio hadn't finished. That counts. I caught it." A ripple of shock went through the team. They'd thought such a tiny misbuzz wouldn't matter, but here was Paul pointing it out. Rules are rules. James's stomach sank. Could that misbuzz cost them the game? But then, James steadied. He awakened some inner calm. He looked at Paul, looked at the clock, looked at his teammates. The buzzer sounded for the final chase. They were in. The Gummer, Paul's nickname when roaming the studio for the chase, sat up in his seat, glare sharpened. The team began answering, one correct after another. James felt as though he was riding a roller coaster of adrenaline. The clues flashed, the time ticked. Paul responded quickly, buzzing in, giving answers with surgical precision. Yet something changed. Perhaps it was the team's unexpected rhythm. Perhaps the earlier minor infraction call from Paul lit something inside them. Fear became fuel. They began to answer faster, more confidently. The pot rose behind them. Time was tight. Paul closed in. 20 seconds, 15 seconds, 10 seconds. The team had to answer 1 more question to stay ahead, and they did. Sarah answered Quetzal, the currency of Guatemala, in under 3 seconds. Correct. The timer showed 8 seconds left when Paul hit his buzzer and answered wrongly. The final buzzer sounded. Silence. Then the studio erupted. James looked around, stunned. They had done it. Against one of the toughest chasers, they had won. £40,000. The highest offer. The Sinner Man, Paul Sinha, stood, applauded slowly, then looked each team member in the eye. He nodded. Backstage, the team cheered, hugged, cried a little. Paul met James, clapped his shoulder. "Well played," he said. His earlier remark about Sarah's minor rule break hung in the air, but his tone was warm. "You made me work for it." James laughed, still trembling. "Thanks, and thanks for pointing that out. I thought it was nothing." Paul winked. "In this game, even what seems like a tiny slip can tilt the scale. You kept your nerve." In the post-show interview, James admitted, "When Paul called out that minor error, it shook me, but in a good way. I realized we were playing by someone else's rule book. That instant made me double-check everything. Every buzz, every timing. It sharpened our focus." Later at home, James told his friends the story, how the chin-up pretense of calm in front of Paul turned into a fight, how the tension tightened until the final buzzer, and how the smallest of infractions, a quick buzz, a half-finished question, might have tipped them into defeat if they'd lost. It became part of their victory narrative. In the world of quizzes, as in life, it turned out that minor rule breaks, the things you overlook, often matter. And when someone as sharp as Paul Sinha reminds you of them, you either crumble or rise. James's team rose. In the way to the final check presentation, they paused, looked at Paul. He smiled, lightly. "I hope you spend it well." They did. And for the viewers at home, another memorable episode of The Chase rolled off into the credit crawl. The vanquished chaser, the wary contestants, the final buzzer, and a victory born not just from knowledge, but from attention to the small things. In quiet moments afterwards, James would think back. The minor rule break, Sarah's premature buzz, could have been their undoing, yet it became the moment that galvanized them, turned their attention sharp, unlocked their win. A demonstration that sometimes defeat is sown in the tiny misstep, and victory harvested by the one who guards the small details. And whenever answers are given, clocks are ticking, and a serious quizmaster looms, maybe it's not just about what you know, but how you play the game, and whether you respect even the smallest rules, because one day you might face someone like Paul Sinha, and he'll be watching the micro moves.